Yo everyone, Skeptic here. Today, I wanted to discuss my thoughts on the recent Bandai Namco AX livestream that happened a couple days ago. Well, at the time of this recording, we got a lot of really cool information regarding the setting for Digimon Survive, a little bit of the gameplay, and various other topics surrounding Digimon in general. So, to start off the video, let's talk about the setting and inspirations for Digimon Survive. During the Bandai Namco AX livestream, Habu Kazumasa, for those of you that don't know, that is the director of Digimon Survive, he talked about redefining the meaning of Digimon and basically reimagining the core concept of Digimon itself. And he kind of talked about the meaning of Digimon and how, depending on what series you got into Digimon, so like what time frame, your interpretations of what a Digimon is can vary from person to person. Habu believes that Digimon are not just digital data in the digital world. They are actually some kind of spiritual being that has always been with us. Digimons are similar to humans in that they are beings with their own thoughts, and because of that, we are able to interact with them and eventually become good friends with one another. He really emphasizes the idea that Digimons are not just programs, and honestly, I think this reimagining of Digimon is quite interesting because it allows Habu to really be creative with the human Digimon partnership, and by redefining the concept of Digimon and their origins, the setting and plot progression, it's not really confined by already predetermined notions of what Digimon is. So it allows Habu to really go outside of the box and add his own vision and perspective into the Digimon space. Similarly to the anime adaptation, Habu wants to make the Digimon represent a reflection of their human partners, and because of that, the humans and corresponding Digimon, they end up sharing similar traits with one another. And within the live stream, multiple times he's mentioned this. The evolution of your Digimon depends on the thoughts of the human partner and the choices that you end up making for the human partner. By making the Digimon reflect their human counterparts in that they have similar traits, it allows for a level of relatability within the game and kind of outside of it as well. Because if you watched Digimon Adventure, the original series, there are similarities between the human characters and their corresponding Digimon partners. This is an important aspect for the game because it really shows a lot of respect for the source material, and it doesn't stray away longtime Digimon fans, since Digimon Survive is not a far deviation away from the core concept of Digimon. It is simply taking the origins of Digimon and its meaning, and it goes into more of a what-if situation. What if Digimon was not just AI, but they were spiritual beings that have always been with us, but we haven't discovered them until whatever event happened in Digimon Survive. It just shows a lot of respect for the source material, and because it's not a super completely new idea, older Digimon fans can relate to Digimon Survive and they can still jump right in without any sort of feelings of, oh, they took my favorite series and they did something completely different, which made me, it makes me feel alienated because I stayed with the series for so long and now they do this complete change up. I really like that aspect that, hey, we are doing a different idea on Digimon, but it's still something that you can understand. So within the live stream relating to this, Habu Kazumasa talked with the director of the anime series, specifically Digimon Adventure, Hiroyuki Kakudo. When designing Digimon Survive, he was inspired by him for a lot of parts actually. So for example, they were discussing about what Digimon is and what's the definition of Digimon, and Kakudo basically told Habu that he believes that Digimons are not really just data on the internet. They're not just AI. They are more of a spiritual kind of existence and actually exist around us around a very ancient age. It's just because people at this era encountered the Digimon through the Digivice that people are calling these monsters Digimon. If we somehow encountered them in the past, there must have been some other kind of naming that existed before a Digimon, basically. And having this discussion, it really inspired Habu to have this kind of spiritual design and a spiritual take for the Digimon, as well as the whole game setting of Digimon Survive. And multiple times in the stream, Habu really reiterates that he believes that Digimon are not just data, that they're not just AI. They're way much more than that, and they basically have been around us for a long time. So with that concept in mind, he decided to make a fantasy kind of story around Digimon, and then he ended up writing about the stories that Digimons actually existed before the digital age, and that's what we basically see with Digimon Survive. And having this concept reiterated about Digimon being this spiritual beings, to me, it could just be me, but I feel like it creates a very interesting dynamic between what we view Digimon as and what Habu envisions Digimon to be. By having this emphasis on a more spiritual design of Digimon, it really opens up a lot of opportunities to redesign and reintroduce Digimon that we already seen before in a new perspective. And it basically reignites my interest in learning about the backgrounds of the Digimons presented within Digimon Survive. So for example, right, Agumon, as we've seen him in the anime, we typically know what this Digimon is. But is the Agumon in the digital age kind of act similarly to an Agumon that has existed for a longer time before the digital age? And to me, I find it kind of fascinating that there is a possibility to redefine and reimagine what an Agumon is, or what a specific Digimon is, because of the difference in time frame. So Digimon that we basically know right now could be different depending on what Habu specifically does. I could just be overthinking it, but that is a lot of potential in reigniting interest for older Digimon. Because, for example, right, Pokemon, they basically reignite the series by adding a new region, new Pokemon. That is the main draw for the series. And Digimon is kind of like that as well, but I feel like by having a different concept of Digimon and redefining the meaning, they're not necessarily limited to just adding new Digimon to reignite people's interest. They can go back to older Digimon, ones that people already know about, and redefine their concept and their meaning, and it could add something completely new to Digimon as a whole. Some Digimon that I may not necessarily like right now, my perspective can be changed due to the possibility and how Habu envisions these Digimons and how they act around their human partners. You never know what's going to happen, especially in visual novels, so hey, my perspective could change, and I am down for it. I am completely down for it. So, I already said that visual novels, depending on what you're playing, can be very unpredictable. One route that you thought you were going completely goes into another one. You may have thought you got the good ending, but then you actually got the bad ending. And with that topic in mind, Habu in the live stream talked about kind of the reality and psychological aspects of human beings, in that human beings don't always love themselves. They don't always make the right choices. So for example, in the anime series, Taichi and all the other characters, they are the heroes that are always doing positive things. They'll have difficulties for sure, but they will always end up making the right choice. However, in Digimon Survive, I want everyone to know that in the real world, when we encounter Digimon, an unknown monster for the first time, some people will not make the right choice, and it's okay to not make the right choice because we are all human beings. So, in turn, Habu finds it to be more of a realistic story than the other Digimon concepts and perspectives that were shown throughout the anime series. And for this perspective, I actually like this atmosphere that Habu wanted to go for, because stories that are more realistic are easier to remember because they don't stray so far into the unknown, right? People will not make the right decisions all the time. It's just not gonna happen. And because of that, that's what makes us human, those imperfections. This makes the story so much more relatable, and by having it be more relatable, it's harder to forget because there are aspects that you can be like, oh, you know, this character, they did this one thing. I don't agree with this one thing, but I can see why they've done this. And it creates a very interesting dynamic between the player and the characters within Digimon Survive. Like, the reason why I really like this atmosphere is because with other monster catching games, usually, they cater towards children because the characters, they usually end up doing the right thing because it's meant to reflect and influence more positive actions. By taking this more realistic approach, I feel like it will have a greater impact on the effectiveness of the storytelling, and it has a really huge potential to leave a major impact by taking on this more realistic approach. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen within Digimon Survive and kind of the plot surrounding the whole thing. Right, so we kind of talked about the settings and inspirations for Digimon Survive. So now I want to dive into the development concerning Digimon Survive. So just to sum it up, Abu started this project as a challenge project, and he started pretty small. He was leaning towards an indie-sized game and focusing on and/or giving the core fans of Digimon a more different experience from all the previous titles. However, because the project started small and it was developed by a very small team, they faced a lot of challenges, which resulted in spending double the time that they planned at the start, which resulted in today that they just finished the game and will finally release it towards the end of the month. However, Habu would say that because of the change to a different developer for finishing the game, they were able to brush up the game a lot more than what they previously thought, and the volume of the game is much more detailed, so we understand a lot more about the world and believes that we'll be able to enjoy the game as much as he wants us to. Overall, I'm actually just glad that the current development team was able to pull through and release the game, because I've always had these thoughts that Digimon Survive was getting canceled because there were multiple instances where we barely got any news, like not even an inkling of news. There was just complete silence. So I thought the game was completely done. It was a wrap. I didn't even know that Digimon Survive was supposed to be a smaller project, and knowing that they had to switch development teams because they needed more resources and it took a lot longer to develop, it makes sense to why they didn't want to talk about the game, because it was in a finicky situation where they switched development teams, and by doing that, you're never guaranteed, just because you switch development teams, that the game will get done, or is it even worth the investment to continue developing this game because there are so many challenges. If they released news about a game that they weren't even sure was gonna come out, and they didn't keep their promise to release it, they would lose a lot of trust that they built over time. It's very easy to gain monetary profits, but it's very difficult to regain the trust of your consumers and your players. So I think keeping the news little, basically, I think they made the right choice in not giving us a lot of news about Digimon Survive, because I would rather have them be silent and actually finish the game than constantly giving us news and then the game never gets released. So I'm very happy that they actually were able to finish the game and that they were able to give it as much polish as they could. Alright, so in turn with the gameplay, or not, well, not the gameplay, well, technically the gameplay, but in turn with the development, I wanted to say. Let's talk about the gameplay. So this is kind of the meat and crux of everything here within Digimon Survive. So if we're comparing Digimon Survive to the past mainline games, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, right? Digi-evolving is similar to your typical RPG, but in Digimon Survive, Habu puts a lot more emphasis on the interaction between the human partners and the Digimon in the story. And according to the choices that the player makes, your Digimon can evolve into different routes, which is an interesting way to progress your Digimon in terms of in terms of taking it from a regular RPG and turning it into something more visual novel based, but at the same time impacting that tactical RPG side. Because he's emphasizing the choices that you make, I'm interested to see how much your choices actually impact the Digimon evolution routes. So, in Digimon Adventure, the 1999 anime adaptation, okay, I can't believe I'm saying this, but spoiler alert, if you didn't watch this anime for some reason, just skip this part. Just take your mouse cursor and just dial a little bit forward. But one of the Digimon in the anime digivolves into kind of this eviler, darker version of themselves due to their human partner's emotion. When I first saw that scene, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it made me pretty emotional because the human partner wanted their Digimon to become stronger, but their overwhelming desire corrupted the Digimon and made them evolve into this darker form. If Digimon Survive can capture that similar feeling that I felt when watching the anime, I will be thoroughly impressed. And by having that relationship between the human partner and Digimon and making it super emphasized, it can create a lot of dynamic situations that can enhance the overall storytelling. All I can say is that I'm just curious to see how much your choices have an impact. Because if your choices don't have that much of an impact, then I don't know, it would be kind of strange. I'm not gonna lie, it would be very strange because visual novels, your choices determine the outcome of the story. Each choice that you make, even if it's something stupid or something that seems irrelevant, can completely change the outcome. So it would be kind of ironic if your choices did not matter in a game or in a video game type that really emphasizes your choices. And relating to that, within the live stream, they mentioned that one of the big features of Digimon Survive is the choices that you can make doing the visual novel part. During the visual novel part, you face the choices when you talk to the other characters, when you explore the world, or even when you're actually doing your tactical battles. All these different choices have the effect to influence the story itself, how it progresses and how it ends, as well as the digivolution of your partner and your partner's Digimons. There's a lot of variance and a lot of effect that the choices you make, it can have a lot of influence on the game, on your gameplay. So I've mentioned this before about the two mainline titles before Digimon Survive being Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory. And even though I haven't finished Hacker's Memory yet, I really enjoyed the traditional RPG gameplay. Now, Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, it wasn't perfect. But the level of detail within those two games were astonishing. The numerous amounts of Digi-evolution routes, the unique special move animations, and the different combinations of Digimon that you can form on your team, it adds a lot of replayability within the games. Since Digimon Survive is a visual novel, the replayability factor is less emphasized on the RPG element and more towards the choices that the player makes. Not only does your choices impact the story, but it also has an impact on your Digimon's ability and their evolution routes. I gotta say it's an interesting concept, because it puts a lot of weight behind the decisions you make since it affects more elements. Over the last few years, I've played my fair share of visual novels, and when I make a decision, I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't have a lot of weight to it, because it only affects the storytelling and outcome. Now that's basically, okay, I said it before, so I'm kind of contradicting myself here. But what I mean by this, I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail, is because once you make a decision within the visual novel, like just regular visual novels, not talking about Digimon Survive, I can just load up the save file and replay basically the same events and then just choose the other option. Now, I'm not saying that's not gonna happen in Digimon Survive. It's gonna happen, but because Digimon Survive has more elements than just having the outcome differ, the weight of your overall choices weigh more because it affects more. It's common sense, right? So, because it affects not only the story, but your tactical RPG gameplay, you really have to think more about how these choices will impact your evolution routes and how much it can change up your strategies within your gameplay. Digimon Survive took the visual novel genre and turned it into something more unique and interesting. It gives the player a lot of choices, and at the same time, it allows for more replayability as well, because it's not only your choices that differ the outcome, but also your gameplay. I don't know. It's not like a super unique idea of combining a visual novel and an RPG and putting them together. But the way that they're executing it, I feel, adds a lot of value to both games. One game genre doesn't take away from another. It's very complementary in a sense. Alright, so this is the last major topic that I took notes on during the live stream, which is the battle system. The battle system, it's pretty much a traditional, authentic tactical battle. So at your turn, you're able to select a character on your team, and you have different options that you can select. So for example, if you want to attack, you select attack. And if you go within the menu, you will have different skills equipped to your specific Digimon partner or whatever Digimon you're controlling. And you just go from there. It's pretty standard. But what makes Digimon Survive interesting is that one of the most important parts of the battle is managing the amount of SP your Digimons have. With SP, you are able to use stronger skills of your Digimon, or you can Digivolve them as well. In the live stream, they said that there are different ways to recover SP, but so far they just talked about only one which is talking to your Digimon on the battlefield. So I'm very curious to figure out what other methods you can use to regain SP. In the previous mainline Digimon games, Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, your SP was mainly towards using special moves and using your skills. Having more resource management within Digimon Survive, I think is really engaging and fun because you have to make more thoughtful decisions. Do I want to use this SP to tack on more damage? Or do I want to save it up for a Digi-Evolution and buff up my overall stats? These kinds of questions can create diverse gameplay scenarios for each playthrough, depending on how you play the game and what choices you make. I overall really like the idea of being resourceful because it allows the player to have more options within the battle than just, oh, we're in the battle now, okay, I'm gonna select attack, and I'm not even gonna select the regular one, I'm just gonna use my SP skill, and I'm gonna spam that because it does the most damage, I don't care, just spam it, spam it, spam it. But now that it's kind of linked to your Digi-Evolution, now you kind of have to make this notion of, oh, do I want to do more damage right now? But if it doesn't do enough damage, then I just lost the opportunity to Digivolve this turn, which is more optimal in this situation. It creates a very dynamic situation that I think is really cool to kind of explore and to think about. And within the live stream, there were some confirms that were talked about within Digimon Survive, like, for example, the setting of the story. So I'm gonna try to read it or go through it really fast. It's basically a group of teenagers who came for summer camp. They got involved in a certain accident, transferred to a parallel world where they are meeting Digimon for the first time. They don't know what the monsters are and what they would do to them. So they face a lot of danger, for example, being attacked by the Digimon. And due to that, there's a lot of drama happening amongst the human characters and the corresponding Digimons that are with them. And during the whole journey, the Digimon and the human partners are bonding with each other. And through this bond, they'll eventually make their way out and survive the cruel situation. But I did say that they'll survive the cruel situation. I didn't say all of them, at least of now, because there are 4 confirmed total routes in Digimon Survive. 3 of them are standard, and the last route is unlocked by finishing the game and playing through the game a second time. The story is composed of 12 different chapters. If we count the hidden route, there's technically 13. The first 8 chapters are the same, and then once you hit the 9th chapter, the difference in routes will basically come after the 9th one. And because it's a visual novel, the game is solely visual novel for 70% of it, and 30% is that tactical RPG aspect. And of course, because it's a visual novel as well, there is a feature that you can skip the dialogue that you've already seen to play the game a lot faster. You can also change the difficulty of the tactical RPG side, and you'll receive no penalty for changing the difficulty if you want to make the game easier. If you initially chose something like hard mode and you're like, oh shit, this is too hard, you go to easy mode, there's not a penalty for that. And you don't really receive anything different. You actually receive the same amount of rewards, so you're encouraged to just play at whatever difficulty you want to play. So in the live stream, they talked about the kind of your first playthrough of the game. And within your first playthrough, not all of the characters within Digimon Survive, unironically, will be able to survive. In the hidden route, once you unlock it by playing through the game once, if you are able to make the right choices, you will be able to save everyone. They also talked about DLCs. They basically said that Digimon Survive is a complete game and they will not be able to provide any other DLCs. If I'm wrong about that, comment down below, but that's basically what I've heard within the live stream, so take it for what you will. In Digimon Survive, Habu wanted to give the spotlight to Digimons who are not as famous as the others, so that's how he picked them. Digimon Survive was designed for more of an older audience. Habu thinks adults will be able to enjoy the game. And because of the whole like atmosphere of Digimon Survive, a lot of people thought of the game as a horror game, but Habu exclaimed that he didn't really design Digimon Survive to specifically be a horror game. And last but not least, Habu's talked about having several projects in the pipeline, and the companies have a big vision for expanding Digimon content. And I didn't even know this, but they recruited a few more people to be a part of the Digimon team, and all of their different projects are in the pipeline and are in the process of being made. But because he was so focused on Digimon Survive, he couldn't give information on the next Digimon story. So just hearing that there's more Digimon games in the works makes me so excited, because I am a relatively newer Digimon fan. I didn't grow up with Digimon, but because Pokemon, I slowly started losing interest over time. Digimon filled in that hole that was left in me after I lost interest in Pokemon. And honestly, it makes me feel like a kid again. It just reminds me of a better time in my life. And just watching Digimon Tamers and watching Digimon Adventure and watching the anime and playing the RPG games, I'm excited for Digimon, because this whole time Pokemon always had this spotlight, and Digimon was kind of in the shadows, in my opinion. Everyone can think differently, but that's what I honestly thought. And now that I'm actually getting more into Digimon and I'm learning more about the designs, like, okay, so Gilmon, Terriermon, Gallantmon, Vmon, there's a lot of Digimons that I've known about, that I've liked, but when I played Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, I saw way more Digimon that I never even knew existed. So like, for example, Cyberdramon, oh my god, he looks fucking cool. Like the way that, it's such a simple design. It reminds me of Charizard in a sense, that it's very simple, but it looks so badass. Oh my god, but I don't want to ramble for too long. But overall, watching the whole live stream and seeing Habu excited about the game, being super enthusiastic about it, and talking about the setting and inspiration for Digimon Survive and their development and the gameplay and what he wants us to, and how he envisions Digimon, not just within Survive, but as a whole. I'm very excited to basically play his perception of Digimon as a whole. That's pretty much all I got in terms of the information. Maybe there was some stuff that I left out in the live stream, but if I did, put it in the comments below. I'm curious to see what I missed. And with that being said, thank you everyone so much for watching the video. If you got this far, I hope everyone here has a great day, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at. And until next time. Bye.